Welcome to Living Life on the Max with Keisha B. Spivey, a weekly podcast that will challenge you and encourage you to live your best life yet. Hello there. Thank you for tuning in to Living Life on the Max. I am Keisha Spivey, and I am so excited to talk to you over these next couple of minutes about something that we all deal with every single day. What I want to talk to you about is overcoming stress. And I'm not going to come to you with some feel-good coping mechanisms and things you need to do. No, what I'm going to do, and I want to go ahead and warn you, is I want to challenge you. I'm going to charge you to take a look in the mirror. So often when we think about stress, we think about all the things that are coming against us. But how about all the things that we bring upon ourselves that's creating a stress that we want to overcome, that we're now trying to figure out how to cope with and deal with? When we think about stress and pressure and those never-ending to-do lists, they impact our health. They impact our thoughts. They impact our feelings. They impact our behavior. These stressors and all these things that got us going all kinds of crazy with, anxiety and fear and doubt, these things that got us wound up so tight that we're not even enjoying our life, these are things that we need to deal with. One of the things that saddens me is so many people have just learned to tolerate this and they've learned to cope with it, but they've forgotten as children of the Most High God that we have overcoming ability within us and we can overcome them. So again, I'm not going to be talking to you about just how to cope, because this type of literally overcoming and this type of dealing with this requires us to be honest. It requires us to evaluate some of the choices that we're making. It challenges us to look at the decisions that we're making and why we're doing the things that we're doing. So, I just want to talk to us briefly today about literally understanding the power of knowing who and what and why that these things keep coming, why you allow these things to keep being a part of your world, why they keep showing up, why you can't get away from them. So even as I'm sitting here having a little bit of a technical opportunity, I just wanted us to realize that we have a role to play. We have responsibility. There are things that we need to do. I went online and Googled coping with stress. I went to see what would come up. What did Google have to say? And all it did was give me list after things that we can do. Talking about getting more balance and exercising and drinking water, connecting with people, carving out hobby time, practicing meditation and yoga, getting some sleep, bonding with the pet, taking a vacation, seeing a therapist. All these things to just deal with it. But I just believe there's a difference between overcoming something and coping with something. There's a difference with rising above something than just literally settling down in it. When you think about overcoming, it requires power. Coping, it shows tolerance. And so we got to think about what it is we want to do. How do we want to approach these stressful situations and these things that are happening in our life? So what I'm going to talk to you about today is probably not what you think would be the subject on overcoming stress, but I want to talk to you today about the power of knowing who the heck you are. The power of knowing who you are. When I think about people in history that were bombarded with pressure and had to deal with all these pressing situations, the first person that comes to mind for me is Jesus. And when I think about Jesus, I think about pressure, but I also think about peace under pressure. When I think about him, and I think about what he dealt with and what he was faced with on a daily basis, he was constantly under pressure. He had demands constantly placed on his time. He always had people around him. He was constantly being interrupted. He was misunderstood. He was criticized. He was lied on. He was ridiculed. I can go on and on about this pressure. But even with this crazy amount of stress, he always remained at peace. So it's one thing for us to talk about overcoming stress and us looking at all these little tactics on things that we can do to make it better. But why not look at the examples of someone who lived it out before us? How did Jesus remain at peace with pressure on every side? Jesus managed himself. I want you to think about that for a moment. He managed himself. In these next couple weeks, we're going to talk about how to overcome stress through the model of Jesus Christ, through his example. And as I started to think about this thing, the first thing he shows us, that he demonstrates for us in overcoming stress, means that we have to know who we are. We have to know who we are. Pressure doesn't change your identity. It shouldn't change your identity. When Jesus was in the midst of all kinds of pressure, I thought of John 8:25, and it says, when he was in the midst of dealing with all of this, they came to him and they asked him a question. They asked him, "Who are you?" They were demanding an answer. And what I love about this text is Jesus' reply was so simple. He said, and I want you to peep this, peep the attitude in this. I want you to peep the truth in this. He says, "I'm the one I've always claimed to be." I'm the one I've always claimed to be. The situations and the circumstances and the pressure and all that was coming against him did not change who he was. And the reality is this: if you don't know who you are in the midst of a situation, that situation will attempt to tell you who you are. If you don't know, who you are as you're dealing with and going through pressure, then the pressure will try to tell you who you are. If you don't know who you are subconsciously, you're going to let other people and the pressure convince you who they think you are. These circumstances, this pressure will pressure you into compromising your identity when you don't know who you are. Pressure should not have the power in your life to change your identity. Pressure shouldn't change who you are, not when you know who you are. Who do you claim to be in and out of season? When things are going good and when things are not. When you're on the mountaintop or when you're in the valley, who are you? What you need to understand is insecurity produces pressure. I'm going to say that again. Insecurity produces pressure. A lot of stress that we face and that we deal with, it comes from hiding behind our mask. It comes from living double lives. It comes from being unreal with other people, trying to be somebody that you're not. When we're insecure, we feel pressured into performing. We feel pressured into conforming. We set all these unrealistic expectations for ourselves, and then we work and we work and we work and we keep right on working, and we never feel like we're making any progress. And all of this work and all of this being somebody else and doing something else and trying to please everybody else without being true to who you really are is creating unnecessary pressure. Pressure that's causing you to need to go out here to take a vacation. The pressure, because you don't know who you are. So when you think about the solution to this, it begins with knowing who you are. You got to not only know who you are, but you need to know whose you are. You aren't here by accident. You have a purpose. There's a plan for your life. The pressure didn't come to destroy you. The pressure is coming to perfect you. What's your perspective on the problem? What's your perspective on the pressure? That is directly in relation to your perspective on who you are. Do you see yourself as an overcomer in that pressure? Do you see yourself rising above in that situation? God, the creator of the universe, has given you every single thing that you need to be an overcomer and to overcome stress and pressure. I shared this with you before. You can't get away from outside pressure, but how about you limit some of that you're putting on yourself? The fears and the doubts that you're dealing with in your mind, it's self-induced pressure that you're putting on yourself. I know for me, let's just be real for a moment. When the pressure starts coming, I immediately start figuring out what I need to fix out there. But what if we stopped? And we looked in here, we looked into our hearts, we looked into our minds, and we realized the ways that we've been deceived and how we're looking at things all wrong. It's so easy to start looking out. But in order to truly overcome stress and to overcome pressure, you gotta look within. To overcome stress, you must know who you are. And until you deal with your identity issues, you're gonna constantly be weighed down by the pressures and cares of others in this world. The pressure and the stress that you're dealing with, how much of it is because you're having an identity crisis? You call yourself a believer, so you're a Sunday saint and a Monday ain't. You believe until it doesn't look like you want it to believe. So is your identity grafted and grounded in truth, or is it grounded in circumstances? Is it grounded in what you know, or is it grounded in what you see? Who are you? When I read this, it just literally made this lesson come to life for me. It says, just when the caterpillar thought the world was ending, she became a butterfly. Let me say that again. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was ending, she became a butterfly. Why? Because the caterpillar didn't know who she was. That cocoon was full of stress. It was bombarded with pressure. There wasn't any room to move around. And she thought the stress was going to destroy her because she was thinking like a caterpillar. She was feeling like a caterpillar. She was projecting her future and where she was going and the purpose and the plan based on a caterpillar status. But guess what? There was a butterfly inside of her all along. Just like there's a butterfly inside of you. When pressure and stress attempt to overtake you, you better know who you are. I know sometimes life makes us feel like we're wrapped up in that cocoon, but I think about a caterpillar in the cocoon. That cocoon is spent by what's coming out of the caterpillar's mouth. She's being, and yes, I say she's being bubble wrapped in what she's spitting out. What she's saying is protecting her. What she's saying is creating a safe environment for her to grow and to nourish and to become who she's been ordained to be, to develop into who she was ordained to be. It's a safe place, but it's an uncomfortable place. It's an inconvenient place. It's probably a place that she didn't choose for herself, but it's necessary. The pressure on the cocoon, the pressure on the caterpillar is required for the butterfly to come forth. But it's been a butterfly in there all along. And I'm telling you this because you need to realize in the pressure, in the situations that you're dealing with, and the obstacles that you're facing, there's a butterfly in you. You need to know who you are. You've been redeemed. You've been purchased. God's chosen you. You're loved. You're the beloved. You're the apple of his eye. You're his masterpiece. You're his crowning glory. That's who you are. So even in the midst of the cocoon of life and trouble and trials and situations and circumstances, you got to know I'm a butterfly. I am beautiful. I am fearfully and I am wonderfully made. And yes, I might feel trapped for this season, but this too shall pass. This cocoon did not come to stay. I'm going to fly up out of this. And then I'm going to soar. And I'm going to go. And I'm going to do great things because this pressure has strengthened me. It's built my muscles of faith. It's built my tenacity. It's built my perseverance. It's built my determination. It's given me the will to win because I didn't know how weak I was until I couldn't lift. It took the pressure to develop me and foster me into what I needed to be so that I could go forth. You got to know who you are. The first step to truly overcoming stress and not living a life of just coping with it is to simply know who you are. I know that's not real deep. I know that's not, over the top. But if you knew who you were, would you have a different perspective on what you were going through? If you knew who you were, would your mindset on the process change? If you knew who you were and whose you were. Next week, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and we're going to take the next step. And this is one I know is going to step over all of our toes, including mine, because we're going to take the step about being honest about who you're trying to please. How much stress is coming into your life because you're being a people pleaser? And I know that's not the label you want to put on it, but how much of your life is being geared toward making other people happy? And the truth is, half of those people don't care about you, and half of those people are not attached to your assignment. They're not attached to where you're going. But you're so busy trying to please them that you haven't been focused on who you are supposed to be pleasing. So until we connect next week, I want to challenge you. Spend some time this week centered in and getting grafted and grounded in your identity. Because how much could you overcome where stress is concerned if you simply knew who you were? So until we connect again on next week, I just want to challenge you. Do you to the max. God bless.